Contour line drawing is many different forms of drawing. If you guys remember from my video last week, we discussed that it can be just drawing the outline of your figure, it can be doing one continuous line drawing, it can be doing blind contour. Each one of these we are going to explore. Last week we did outline. Today, if you guys can guess by the picture right in front of your face here, we are doing the continuous line gesture drawing. So as usual, Grizz and Norm have a perfect example of what continuous line gesture drawing can be. And they kind of say that you want to think of it as if you're thinking of unwrapping a wire hanger and you're going to try to make a figure out of just that long one piece of wire that you have in front of you. So if you guys can see here, this is kind of examples of different ways that if you just took one wire, this is what your figures might end up looking like. Now we have a little bit more flexibility when we're using one line versus one wire, right? Because I can kind of do anything I want and I can make my line go forever and ever and ever and ever. Whereas, if we were dealing with a coat hanger, we don't have an infinite amount of material. So if you guys can see here, the idea is pretty much really energetic, loose. This is definitely not something that you're going to get a hyper detailed rendered drawing out of. You just want to be thinking still of the direction of what you are telling your viewer things are going, right? And it's going to get you something that's a nice, loose, gestural drawing. So this is not the end goal for today, but this is what you want the people that are viewing your work to kind of see within the drawing that you initially end up with today, which is going to look a little something more like this, or rather, with the time frame that we have, hopefully something a little more down here in this range. Something that they do mention as well that is really important is the idea of keeping it alive, right? So we always want to remember when we're doing gesture drawings and any kind of quick drawings, because we usually don't go above 5-minute drawings right now, where we want to think of the idea we're trying to display something really quick. We want to show emotion, energy, some sort of movement within our picture with very limited information, very limited time. So to do this, I think honestly perfectly the continuous line thing almost does it all on its own, but you can see we're not so much worrying about proportions, like look how long this leg got and everything just kind of wraps and curls and then he goes back into the hip. So you want to kind of understand that you're going to have some chaotic energy in this picture, but you want to use it to your advantage. So here I grabbed a couple examples of what a continuous line drawing could be. Now these aren't figure drawings necessarily, except for this guy right over here. But what we're seeing is a leaf, a hand, a figure, right? Like a kind of a bust of a figure there. And if you guys look, this is all one continuous line. Let's zoom in a little bit on the leaf right here and explore that for a second. So let's assume that this artist start with the stem, right? You can see that you can follow this line all the way up and around, blah, blah, blah. If we kept going, it comes down to here. And then look, even the internal vein of the leaf is still part of that same line that we started down here. Now again, looking at all these pictures as a whole, look at the chaos that is going on in this hand. But the thing is, we know it is a hand, right? And that's kind of the goal of what we're trying to accomplish today. This hand looks rough, it looks jagged, it looks all over the place, but it still tells you what it is within all that chaos. And to give a couple of artist examples of continuous line figure drawing here, I have an example of a couple different artists here, and you can see that it ranges, right? So I can tell you for sure that this one was probably like 1 minute or less, and he was really just trying to zone it in, zone it down. And although you can't tell exactly what's going on with these figures, you can tell we got a head shape here, and the foot and into the leg is right here, and all that stuff. And that's kind of the idea, right? So this is what you want to be doing within your warm-up sketches, or if you're ever faced with a 1 minute drawing, how can you accomplish that energy within that time frame? Now, in the middle one, this isn't exactly a continuous line picture because there are points where the line is broken, but this is a limited information picture that kind of follows the same idea as the continuous line reference, where you can see we're coming in and into here, creating stuff like this, and the shapes all kind of do play a line continuous with each other. So again, when you have some extra time, you can kind of slow yourself down and think about, all right, well, I'm going to make this line, and then you commit to it, and then you come in with another line. Sometimes having to make that commitment on a line and then moving on is going to do so much for you in terms of speeding up your natural drawing patterns, and also just kind of speeding up your critical art thinking while you're drawing figures, references, or out of your imagination. And then lastly, we have this really beautiful picture from Samuel here, and I just thought that this was kind of perfect to represent what a continuous line drawing can be. There's so much information in here. Obviously, he came back while kind of going chaotic in here. He kind of switched to the side of his charcoal pen, and we started to get some tone. But the chaos involved in this picture that somehow tells the complete story of, like, we have the figure. He even was able to fit in, you know, the shoulder muscles going into the back, the lat muscles, and then switching to the hips into the butt. It's just so much information within this chaos. And like, I know I keep saying that word, but that's really what this is. And I know a lot of people aren't comfortable letting themselves get loose and chaotic with their work, and everything has to be clean and perfect and precise. And one of the things about that is, you know, it's really good to, you know, show to someone your clean, perfect work. But a lot of times that clean, perfect work can come off very stiff and motionless and not enough energy. And a lot of times you'll get these critiques from portfolio people saying, I need more energy. There's not enough liveliness in this picture. It doesn't feel like it's moving. And so this is one of the best ways that you can kind of stop, take a step back, and work on incorporating some of that energy within to the beginning part of your picture. This could be a groundwork of your picture that no one sees, but something that leads to the energy within the finished, clean, pretty product. As a quick example here before we get started, I wanted to use this, you know, not very well-known character here. But just, you know, as you guys can see, I'm literally not picking my pencil up. And I just want to really make that clear that that's what we're going for in this video, and that's what I was showing up earlier. So you can see even when I'm trying to go back to the cheek or go to any details like the nose and the eyes, it's all one continuous line. So insane. There is nudity in this video, so here is your warning to back out if you'd like to. Remember, this is a figure drawing and life drawing video, so we do have some nude model poses that I went in and censored, so they are a little more appropriate. Now back to the video. I don't know what that was. I'm sorry. Anyways, so what we're doing right now is, remember, always do your warm-ups when you're going to do figure drawing. So this is a couple 1 minute, 2 minute, and 5 minute drawings that I did before I did the pictures that I drew for you guys in the video. I did stick with the continuous line just so I can kind of figure out my faults and my positives, I suppose, with where I was working with. And you guys can see, like, I mean, the proportions aren't all there, but they're not really supposed to be. But they have like a really good energy to them, and I kind of like the wrong placed proportions and other, like, on non-balanced limbs. So okay, jumping straight into it. Here is our first pose. We got 3 minutes on the clock, and we're going for it. So remember, squiggles, wiggles, chaotic energy, whatever you want to call it, whatever you want to do, but just don't pick your pencil or whatever you're drawing with up. So you can go as many times around a circle as you want. Up, down, around, anything you want. You can just fully fill this thing in with scribbles. You can see here I'm going a little slow. I'm kind of thinking my steps through a little bit, which is completely fine. You can stop and just kind of hold your pencil down for a second and think about your next move. This isn't, you know, like continuous line in terms of you have to keep moving nonstop. It's continuous line in terms of just keep that pencil down on the paper. Don't pick it up and go back to the head and then back to the foot, right? You want to just have everything kind of continuous and just on that one single drawing. So what you're going to notice is a lot of times the proportions are messed up. Now what you're going to notice with my drawings in particular, because we're all going to have our specific faults. Mine, and this is pretty clear to, if you guys have seen any of my past videos, I've mentioned this too, I always draw the head too small. I don't know what it is. I think I'm planning on drawing the figure a lot smaller than I do, but especially with continuous line drawing, my heads were much too small, which is why I always save some room that I can come back and build that head back up and fix it. So I definitely recommend you guys kind of like within your first drawing or two, kind of notice what you're struggling with. There's going to be something, always acknowledge that there will be something that you're struggling with. That's why we come and do lessons and stuff so we can improve, right? So mine is always the head. I'm working on that. I'm working on it with you guys right here, but essentially, so I'm kind of knowing my faults. I'm not letting it stop me from figuring out the rest of my figure, though. I'm not going to be like, crap, I messed up with the head, and then I'm just going to get stuck on the head for the entire 3 minutes and not do my drawing. The head is a piece of the puzzle, and I want to remember that when I'm drawing here. So I'm going to go ahead and get most of the body in. I was drawing lines around the chest, so I made my way back to the head. So now I can come in and kind of fix those proportions a little bit. And then once I think that looks a little more accurate to the head size of the figure, I can kind of come in and finish a little bit more of my drawing here. So I'm missing this arm up here. And then not too much. I mean, I don't get to everything in this picture. It's a 3-minute drawing, so I didn't get to the ponytail, and I didn't get that last foot in the background there. I kind of overlooked that. But again, just kind of take your time with this if you have to. If you like the chaotic, fast-paced, just keep your pencil moving thing, go for that too. See what you get. Anything goes with this. There is no real set rules, and I would love to see you guys show me some really chaotic, crazy drawings. So you guys might recognize this model from the last video that I did. In his pack, he had some pretty good pictures, some kind of good action pictures on the Croquis Cafe website. So I figured, why not? This is the thing that we want to focus on right now in the continuous line is energy and movement and liveliness in our drawings, right? So, I mean, if you already have it going on in the picture, it only makes it that much easier to then hopefully translate it to your piece. So again, really good movement going on in this, right? We kind of feel this moment of tension between him and this rope. He's pulling it, whatever he's doing. So I really like his wide stance, which is what I'm going to kind of play with and get in there. What I was finding for myself too, beyond my super small head tendencies, which you guys can see are back in full effect up there. Don't worry, I do go fix it. But anyways, back to the point here. I really wanted to focus on that energy and kind of placing in the ground of the foot, right? And also just playing up the fun look of the leg. I don't know if you guys noticed this, but to me, legs have this really curious zigzag shape, which is kind of used to kind of counterbalance body weight. It's it's a part of balancing and standing up, right, as a human. So they kind of have this interesting back and forth dynamic, and it's kind of fun to play with when you're not so stuck on proportions and stuff like that in your head. So use this opportunity to really kind of play and come up with some unique shapes. This is kind of where stylization, if I can talk, comes in, where you can kind of really explore and figure some different ways of showing something out. Think of cartoons. They don't always have any muscle structure half the time, right? But it's believable. And why is it believable? It's because they came up with an interesting shape that is believable enough to work, and it probably relates a little bit to what we're used to. So again, use this as an opportunity to be your playground, or whatever you want to call it. Just have fun with it. I don't know how to explain it any other way. It's easy to get stuck on things. It's easy to kind of over criticize your art. But when you kind of tell yourself you know what, there's nothing I can do to make this not look chaotic and crazy, and you kind of just lean into that, I promise you, it just helps out a ton. And you guys can see too, in this picture, I was going back and forth from the leg, and then I would follow my lines back up to the head. That's perfectly fine too. If you are working on the foot and then suddenly your interest is piqued on making the head bigger or something like that, and you don't want to create some crazy lines in your picture, that's fine. Go ahead and just follow your lines back up to the top. And then you might just have a bolder, thicker line, but it won't actually look like you just kind of scribbled through your drawing. So there are ways that you can kind of maneuver this technique to your liking. Okay, so we're going to jump into the first of the 2 5-minute drawings here. And I got this kind of action-y pose here. I like this one with the gun, and he's holding the clip in his hand. But you guys can change that to whatever you want. So again, I'm going to have small head syndrome. I think I just kind of need to acknowledge that and really hopefully push through that eventually in my efforts here. But I am just going to try to figure my pose out the best. Now, I will say I didn't get the best proportions on this one for sure, but I did like the energy that I was able to come through with. So, you know, I keep saying that, but this figure drawing practice is all about that loose energy. And you have 5 minutes now. So if you were able to complete something head to toe, squiggly or not, you know, not so squiggly in the 3 minutes, slow down a little bit on this one. Take your time, maybe plan out your lines a little bit. Something you can do is use the squiggly lines to kind of create some volume in your picture. So you can create like volumetric, like cylindrical lines going around your arm and stuff like that to show volume in 3D form, if that's something you want to do. Now, with a 5-minute drawing, you know, my plan is not to kind of get too stripey with my drawing. I kind of want to have a little more realism, at least from whatever I can achieve with, you know, this continuous line format. But again, it really kind of forces you to think outside the box. Now, while I'm kind of drawing here a little bit slower, I do want to mention a couple things. If you're new to this, if this is your first time trying something like this, you're going to notice yourself lift up the pencil, and that's completely okay. Don't sweat it. Don't feel like you have to start over or something. Just try to put the pencil down wherever you think you last had it before you picked it up, and just keep going. This is something that like you really have to train your brain. Completely different way of drawing, right? It's just completely different. And at least to me, it almost felt like you're trying to draw in like a foreign language, if that makes sense, right? It's like you don't know exactly what you're doing, but you kind of have a ground plane understanding, and you're just trying to like go with the flow a little bit. And that's like the best way to explain what's happening here. So I'm just kind of trying to figure out my pose. Obviously the stance is getting wider and the legs are thicker and thinner. And I'm kind of going to catch those proportions here and there and make some things bigger, make some things smaller if I can, but there is no erasing. So it's another challenge of this whole drawing, is to kind of like settle with your mistakes and learn ways that you can actually lean into your mistakes as well. Because a lot of times what you'll notice as artists is you're going to find these happy accidents. And I'm not trying to quote Bob Ross on that one, but it's true. You're going to have these instances where something just kind of works and it was completely accidental, and it's going to develop. It could develop into something like your style, you know, or it could develop something else. So there's always those times where our mistakes are going to really, really frustrate us and get us down. That's completely understandable. Happens to me all the time. But sometimes if we have the ability to, like in this figure drawing, like this isn't for a client, this isn't for anything other than my own practice. I have the ability to just look at my mistake, like that skinny little leg I drew compared to his other one, and like, you know, have fun with it, or like lean into it, or maybe that's his character trait, right? And I can kind of play it up or something. It's all kind of like within the fun of what we're drawing here in this crazy kind of squiggly style. So I have 1 minute to go and my figure's basically figured out, right? So now I'm just going to kind of come in and just like try to make things a little more solid, you know, maybe figure out some internal details that I kind of ignored. If you guys notice, for me personally, and like if you guys are following along, this doesn't have to be how you do this, but for me personally, I mainly focus on the outline when I'm doing this kind of contour drawing. It's not necessarily intentional, but it's because it's kind of how I'm like figuring out the pose a little bit. But if it helps you guys to go in and, I don't know, find a belly button, find a nipple, find the line going down the stomach or the back or whatever it is, draw that in. Don't hesitate to draw that in. This isn't like last week's where it was just the outline. This is like anything goes. So get squiggly, get wiggly, get those lines kind of moving, chaotic and crazy, and really push yourself to just kind of have some weirdness in your picture. All right, this next pose is going to start quick, so get ready, and we are on. Okay, so again, I'm going to have small head in this. So what I was kind of practicing with this one, if you guys have this problem too, maybe this will help you out. And this was a Grizz and Norm technique, I think. Sorry if it annoys you if I keep talking about them, guys, but they are pretty good. Don't know what to say, check them out. But anyways, they suggest drawing a circle for the head, and then you're going to go into the rest of the body, draw it out. And then what you can do is one of two options. If the circle worked out good, it's the right size for the body that you drew, well, then you draw the head within that circle. Now, if it doesn't work out, you can add to the bottom or the top of that circle. So like, for instance, I could add the bottom of the jawline in addition to the circle and just make the head a little bit bigger. So for me, that was a pretty helpful technique, which is what I was trying to kind of try out in this video necessarily. So if you guys can see, I just have a random lollipop circle up there. I promise I'll go in and fix it later, but this was me trying out a new technique. Anyways, enough about my problems here. I'm just kind of talking through the pose a little bit. So remember, this pose, while it's not in any kind of extreme angle or anything like that, it has some serious foreshortening going on. Look at her hips, or like necessarily where her rib cage is in comparison to her hips. Her hips are starting up a lot higher. They're almost starting at her mid back at the point where they come out, right? This is because her rib cage is in front because she's bending over, and so everything else is behind her. So you do have this kind of overlapping line where the rib cage is now coming in front of where that lower back is starting because she's bent over. So try not to ignore that, right? So if you guys can see in my drawing, I'm kind of playing things up a lot. This is just kind of, if you guys were paying attention with any of the other drawings, the bottom half of my contour line drawings here have been getting pretty long and thick and big. So I don't know what that is, but that must be my continuous line style somehow. But anyways, I do kind of fix that. You guys can see I made the rib cage a little bit bigger there, and the pose works a little more in my favor now. But think about that. Where is the rib cage in proportion to the hips? You could overdo it. You could definitely like have her bent over more, or you can have her bent over a little less. But the bend is kind of the fun in this picture. It's kind of what makes this pose unique. It's like she's kind of crouching, sneakily walking, right? And can we get that energy in the picture? That's the challenge, right? So that's what I was doing here. I was just kind of trying to copy that energy and feeling from the picture. Again, well, we're at 2 minutes now. You had 5 minutes, so take your time with this. Plan things out a little bit. Whatever detail you're about to add in there, make sure you just kind of like think it through a little bit. Have the extra time that you need to make the best choices that you can make. Something I will say that, again, I talked about happy accidents in the last pose. Well, here I kind of had a little bit of a happy accident where, if you guys can see, if I were to place a line looking at the reference picture from her head straight down, it would go to her foot. Now, if you look over at my pose, well, whoops, it didn't exactly line up there, right? And again, this was because I wasn't thinking about my proportions and my lines and stuff like that. I wasn't checking anything. But I kind of like it. It kind of adds a little more movement to the picture. And, it kind of gives that feeling of maybe she is walking. I could actually, if I were to go back into this, I could push that back leg a little more over underneath her, and the pose would actually feel pretty balanced. It's kind of one of those things where, like, you want to remember a model can only hold so much of a pose, right? She can only hold a realistic pose. But when we're walking, we're actually kind of counterbalancing ourselves a little bit. So in my opinion, like, I know it has a little bit of a lean over effect, like kind of a falling effect, but it also kind of has a nice feeling of like movement. Like maybe she just noticed something to the side of her and she just kind of like twitched over a little bit. Which again, that's kind of cool. So now whenever I want to draw something like that, maybe I want to draw a similar pose, something happened, I'm drawing a comic, whatever it is, I can kind of think back to this pose. I can kind of access that muscle memory of when I drew this and what made it successful. And that's what I'm talking about these accidents that then later develop into your style. All right, guys, this was a weird one, I know, but we're just trying out all these different techniques that we find with life drawing. You might find that you really like this technique and maybe you want to adopt it as your natural life drawing go-to. Who knows, right? I hope you did find this video helpful. If you guys have any suggestions for future videos or what you maybe haven't seen on YouTube yet, let me know and I'll make a video happen sometime in the future. Otherwise, thank you guys for watching and have a great day.